Hello, this is Ada Majlis program on the platform of Institute for Development and Diplomacy. I'm Anastasia Lavrina, and today our special guest is Farid Shafiyev, the chairman of the Center of Analysis of International Relations. Mr. Shafiyev, hello and welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. So we have very important topic. Almost 5 hours, the meeting continued in Brussels between the President of European Council, Michel, and the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan. The sides agreed, I will just shortly memorize this, agreed to hold the first joint meeting of the Commissions on Delimitation and Border Security on the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. It's already happened. Agreed to unblock transport links on the principles of transit between Western Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. So your opinion, to what extent does the last meeting brings us closer to the desired result?
Well, first of all, I have to remind that this is the third meeting in a relatively short period since December 2021. And especially the last meeting was just in April. So 1 month and a half later, we have the third meeting. And those meetings help to define the agenda between Azerbaijan and Armenia, the agenda of peace process. Defined several key issues. First of all, peace treaty. Secondly, the commission delimitation problem, creating commission, which has established immediately after the meeting, has been established. And the third issue is the transportation links, and fourth is the complex of humanitarian issues. So this is the 4 major blocks, and the parties agreed that they will continue working on these issues. If we look at the last year period process, mainly which was under auspices of Russia, we had also agreements on, for example, we created trilateral commission on transportation links, opening and unblocking the routes. Unfortunately, we have not registered the progress. So this track, European Union looks a bit more promising, more speedy, with some tangible results, but yet we're still waiting for concrete steps to be undertaken, especially on the Armenian side.
So this is a long process we should be ready for.
Yes, that definitely, especially if issues like delimitation, it will be a long process. What is important that we should agree in principles, what we are doing, and that we are moving in the right direction. And also, I think the key element of the future peace process is the peace treaty. Because we can work and agree on some principles of delimitation, to agree on some maps, on the lines, etc. But the platform, the basis for the future peace process is the peace treaty. So much will depend.
Taking into consideration all of those 5 principles proposed by Azerbaijani side, it seems Armenia also accepted.
Yes, well, at least verbally they confirmed that they don't have problem with our 5 principles. They issued so-called 6 principles of response, which basically, even it's the 6 principles, 6 points, but in essence, it's about 2 issues. It's the Karabakh Armenians and about the Minsk group, the activation of the Minsk group. It looks like Minsk group is dead, and let's be realistic. We won't see any resumption of Minsk Group in the near future.
Mr. Shafiyev, I know your attitude to the position of Minsk Group OSCE, and as you mentioned, the organization almost dead. There is no any activity, but on the papers probably it still exists. So you also observed as a diplomat, as an ambassador, how Minsk Group OSCE worked all of that period of time. What are the key elements, probably the mistakes you can highlight, which you think this Brussels process should avoid in this work?
Well, Minsk Group, actually, we'll look at the history of the Minsk Group. Initially, if we'll take the period of 92-95, it was quite fruitful and effective. I'm speaking about the chairmanship of Italy, and when it was Sweden and Finland. So we had some results, we prepared some documents, and actually two important documents in the peace process. Budapest document prepared for OSCE Budapest summit and Lisbon summit. And the latest was declined by the Armenian side. But anyway, it was prepared by the OSCE Minsk Group. So what happened later, it was the Institute of Co-Chairmanship, United States, France, and Russia. It looks like these countries had some, well, in 90s they didn't have maybe so sharp, deep differences, geopolitical differences, but later it became obvious that they have different priorities, geopolitical priorities. But in the meantime, all three countries, they host a very strong Armenian diaspora and lobby, and they were not keen at speeding up the process of resolution, or they putting the pressure on the Armenian side, because what they produced, it was the Madrid principles. It was accepted in 2009. What we needed is the implementation of Madrid principles. And here, since 2009, we had problem. I mean, we had 11 years until the Second Karabakh War for implementation, and it was delayed. And recently, the former president of Armenia, Serge Sargsyan, he openly admitted that they were not interested in the implementation of those principles. They just tried to postpone it for indefinite time.
So you mentioned the disagreement of the world powers in some particular issues, but what we see now, in a parallel way, what we observe in Brussels process, we see that Russia and the United States of America separately are also trying to be involved in the processes taking place in South Caucasus. Don't you think that it somehow may also affect the final result?
Definitely, it might negatively affect. It will be indeed, it will observe the rivalry and competition.
No, the situation is much worse than it was before.
And for that reason, actually, we don't see how the Minsk Group is going to resume its work, because the United States, Russia, and France are not going to sit together. So that's why I think realistically, it's not just because of the mistakes of the past, but current reality manifests that the resumption of the Minsk Group activity is not possible. But what we have now, it looks like, as I mentioned, that the EU track is effective. Russia has also interest in keeping up with the peace process, with the agenda. But again, as I said, we have created trilateral commission under Russian auspices. There was some other meetings under Russian, let's say, patronage, or let's say, again, maybe the better word, auspices. But it didn't produce any results. So if Russia would like really to show its effectiveness, it should really, on those tracks which we agreed upon, to compel the parties, and in this case to Armenia, because the ball was on the Armenian side, on the opening up the transportation link between Azerbaijan and its Nakhchivan region.
There is another very important, I will say, the key element you mentioned. You're saying that in the beginning, the OSCE Minsk Group was somehow effective, those Madrid principles, and unfortunately, after no any special pressure used by the superpowers on Armenian side, and as was mentioned by President Ilham Aliyev, if the sanctions properly was adopted against the Armenian side and the right time, probably we could avoid the Second Karabakh War and peace process were possible. What's happening today in this Brussels process, it's going well. It's going effective. The statements are being admitted. The commission is being established. Do you think that the European Union should use specific elements of pressure or how it should act not to lose its somehow position of the right platform for the meeting, negotiation, and further?
Well, European Union probably might approach to this issue from different angles with different tools of incentives. And they already announced, Charles Michel, after the last meeting, that they're going to create economic advisory group. If economic package will come for the restoration of railroads, our routes, our links.
Zangezur corridor also.
Yeah, we're speaking about Zangezur corridor. But also, in general, it's more diverse, a more wider network of routes for cars and trucks. So that will be incentive for the countries of the region to work towards the resolution of all outstanding issues. And here, not only we're speaking about economic incentives. After all, we're speaking about lives of people living in the region, both in Armenia and Azerbaijan. It's the question of the future, because until conflict, or let's say conflict-related agenda, if some forces trying to put it back, definitely we won't have durable peace. What Azerbaijan is saying is we leave the conflict in the past and work in the future. If we see some attempts to bring the conflict-related agenda back, conflict-related issues back, then of course we are reviving what indeed was the cause of the conflict in 1987-88. Some policymakers and some peace activists saying, no, that was the cause of the conflict, we have returned back to this issue. But philosophically, if we would like to reach peace, we have to find indeed common ground for the peace, common basis for the peace. And then based on that, we can build on some other issues. What I mean practically, so first of all, it's international law, the principle of international law, respect for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the countries. That's the legal basis. Based on that, we can work on some economic basis. Here, it's not only about transportation links. It's much more. It can be much more diverse and much more broader topics and agenda. And then, of course, we can discuss issues related to minorities within the constitutional framework of respective countries. So that's why I'm saying yes. Whatever was the cause of the conflict in 1987-88, if we're just is going to directly return to that and trying, all our peace process based on that, it won't be successful.
How do you see the position of Armenian government? We see a lot of protests taking place in that country. And the key question, do you think that Armenia is ready to recognize Karabakh as a part of Azerbaijan?
It looks like it is. That's the situation. At least the Pashinyan alluded to that they have to lower the level of demands. And that's what the international community telling them all these years. But again, what we've seen also that Pashinyan himself and his government is not consistent. So there's pressure coming from inside, from outside, and we're changing their position. But in the meantime, we should tell that as compared to other forces within Armenia, probably the Pashinyan government and party is much more, relatively constructive. So at least they would like to see some sort of relationship established between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which we don't see We don't hear from opposition parties. And here we see also quite a new trend among diaspora organizations. I'm speaking about Armenia.
In different countries.
In different countries. For example, we know that in the United States there's an organization called UNCA, which is very radical, nationalist, or even I would say racist. But more recently, there was some statements from our organizations in the United States, which we can accept as a more pro-peace stance.
This position of the Armenian opposition, who was very much disagreed with the final statement published after the trilateral meeting in Brussels, what are these politicians, I would say, afraid of? Why don't they want to see the peace process?
You know, people, especially in diaspora, they made their career, they made their life earnings on so-called ethnic entrepreneurs on the conflict, on conflict-related agendas. So if peace is coming, and if the Karabakh, what they pose as a Karabakh problem, is resolved, then what they're gonna do? That's probably.
So that's a way to learn money?
Yes. I mean, there's so many people involved in, and you know, we are not speaking about some individuals. Books, events, conferences organized, the marathons, and all these events and campaigns. The money is we got money from diaspora, a lot of money, and we're speaking about hundreds of millions of US dollars, which channeled into conflict.
Two more questions I have. The first is about ethnic Armenians who live in Karabakh today. We know that all of the international organizations are now looking at Azerbaijan. What will be the next step?
Mm-hmm.
How Azerbaijan should show the international community and the neighboring countries that it's keen to sustain peace, and all of those ethnic Armenians will get the same rights as Azerbaijani citizens?
The problem that some Armenians live in parallel with reality. The international community as a whole, and many experts tell them that issue of cessation of part of territory from Azerbaijan, unification with Armenia, all these projects, it's not realistic. They've never been realistic. But it took a lot of lives, of Armenian lives. They sacrificed a lot of people for pipe dream, for perverted ideas of expansion of territory, which they actually didn't use. We've seen all this destruction. They think now, especially Shusha is Armenian city, etc. Well, we have historical records who founded Shusha. It was Panakhali Khan, etc. But I don't want to go history. But okay, if you claim that it is your city, why it was in such bad shape? Even Pashinyan admitted after the war, but the Shusha was sad city. And it is, and we see it of those distractions, cultural distraction. So we couldn't manage even those territories which they possessed. So they destroyed everything. I think small parts where they lived, in Khan Candy, in some other settlement. And even in those territories, the situation was very dark.
Especially Dam City, whole city.
Yes. Well, now I think it's clear that the issue of Karabakh Armenians should be handled, resolved within Azerbaijan constitution, within Azerbaijan territorial integrity. Azerbaijan has tools to provide rights for the Armenian people.
Mr. Shafiyev, thank you so much for joining the program today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you again very soon. And I thank you all of those who watched our edition. It was other Majlis media project on the basis of Institute for Development and Diplomacy. Stay with us and see you in the next edition.